Hey guys, this is going to be my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 5. The episode is called Charades. Full spoilers from the start of the review, as always. So this is a Spock and Nurse Chapel themed episode. They kind of do the thing that they did last week with Ortega, where they set it up as a Chapel episode early on, but then through the nature of the plot and the gimmick of the episode, Spock has more screen time than her and takes up more of the focus, but then by the end of the episode it comes back around to Chapel, and she, a bit like Ortega last week, is actually more important to the episode than Spock is. So she actually is the one who saves the day, so to speak. So the setup for this episode is the Nurse Chapel and Spock, who are still kind of in denial over their feelings for each other, are thrown together on this mission back to Spock's home planet. But there's a malfunction where the planet's solar system notices that Spock isn't the same race as everybody else, so they try to course correct him, and as a result he ends up as a human. And this is on theme with what they've been exploring with Spock recently, where he's been trying to get in touch with his human side, explore that. So it's one of those standalone, almost completely comedic episodes where it's sort of exploring what Spock would be like as a human. He even has regular human ears, not Vulcan ears, but it's doing it in a more hijinksy comedic type way, because as Khan explains at one point, she says it kind of has the effect on you of making you like an adolescent. So you're almost going through teenage type hormones. And that's what we see, him reacting to things differently than he normally would. And things come to a head when his wife, or his future wife potentially, his engagement, the woman he's engaged to, her parents come to the ship for a big ceremony and a ritual. As a result, Spock has to try and pretend to be Vulcan once again, so they have to hide the fact that he's been turned into a human. And at the same time, Chapel, along with Uhura and Khan, no, it's Ortega. Is it Ortega or Khan? I forget actually. I think it's Khan. It is Khan, yeah. Khan and Uhura go along with Nurse Chapel to try and figure out what exactly they can do to solve the problem. They go to this alien life form to try and communicate. So it's ultimately up to Chapel to fix the problem, and they're once again playing off their budding feelings, and how there's tension with that because of this visit from Spock's fiance. So that's the setup. It's a weaker episode, definitely, for me. I didn't find a lot of the comedy that funny. I found it kind of goofy. And I think there's a problem here where the character of Spock and the actor playing him, I don't think he's the best actor. So I did find a lot of his reactions kind of over the top and a bit grating. I think there's this thing with him where, even though he's not the best Spock, I guess he's a perfectly okay Spock in the context of this being an alternative Trek and an alternative version of Spock. But because he's not got the best range, the actor, then he still works okay as Spock. But when he tries to do comedic scenes or a bit more of a range, it doesn't really pay off that much. And there's just certain scenes in the episode that really drag, because the episode's pretty much an hour long, which I thought was a bit long for it, considering what it is. It didn't really feel like it had to be an hour long, but it was. I guess it didn't drag too much, but there were definitely scenes that were dragging, and just some quite soapy scenes that weren't really working for me. I'd forgotten that Spock was like engaged, and when they brought her back into it, and they were doing the whole "oh, I'm engaged," and the whole family thing. Now, the one playing her mother was quite funny, and there was some good scenes with her, and I did like, you know, the line about like he needs a more resilient bladder because he like excuses himself to go toilet at one point, and it's at a crucial point in the ritual. So she was quite funny, and you had a thing with her and her husband where the husband was a bit more like the more friendly, light-hearted one, and she was like the more stern, traditional one. But a lot of those scenes did drag on and were quite boring, and as I said, I didn't really find the gimmick of Spock being almost like human and a bit of an adolescent that funny or endearing overall, and that takes up a big part of the episode. But there's just stuff like in that scene, like the ritual scene. I didn't really care about that. Those moments, I didn't really care about him and the drama with his like fiance, and I think partly it's also just because it just feels like it's a buffer between him and Nurse Chapel getting together, and by the end of this episode they do get together. Like Spock calls off the relationship or says we need to put it on hold because eventually they reveal the truth. And there's quite a nice moment with his mother because she helps them with the whole ruse and like teaches him to be Vulcan, and he points out that she didn't question this, she didn't like, you know, pick holes in it, she just showed support and love. And it's almost like the contrast with his fiance's parents. But the fiance is mad and Spock lied to her and didn't tell her the truth, and that's kind of when he confesses and he's having doubts and that they should put things on hold for a while. And once again, that scene was pretty flat for me, but it just seems logical. If you excuse the pun, then he's not gonna marry this woman. Now I don't know the full backstory, so I know that these are characters that are in the original series and that there is a particular end to their relationship, but like I was pretty certain then he's gonna have a thing with Chapel, so he's not gonna end up with this woman, so that's just a thing. I do like the contrast at the beginning between him and Chapel, where they show you them separately on the ship interacting with people, and Chapel is getting ready for like this interview for like a fellowship at like a Klingon place, and where it's like this big opportunity for her. So we see the different ways she's preparing and things like boxing and like a night out with like the girls, and then that contrasts with Spock and the girls as well and their gags. So, and you get a good flip of that later on when Spock has become like human, so we see then he's actually reacts differently to those moments. So like you get like a gag told by one of the, I think it's Ortega, so you get the flip of that where Spock is like the Vulcan doesn't get it, but then he's enthusiastic and laughs when he's like the human, and but the point is that he's overdoing it, so you also get him doing like the cookery, or Pike doing the cookery, and it's just not connecting to like Vulcan Spock, but then the human Spock like laps it up, and again is too enthusiastic. It's like he's going too far the other way. But I like the way we sort of set up both of them having these interactions and her preparing for her thing, because it's almost like there's a link here where they're both fish out of water a little bit, because I got the impression what Chapel was doing to try and prepare for this exam or this interview didn't really feel like the sort of thing she would normally do. So there is sort of like a link between the two of them thematic wise in this like opening, and as I said, it did sort of pay that off, the stuff later with Spock when he made the change. But so the comedy's hit and miss, and I mean ultimately it is a comedy episode. I think probably that the line from the mother is the highlight, and I think the other highlight is from Ortega, like when they're teaching Spock how he talks as a Vulcan, and they're all mimicking him. That's fun stuff, and I really enjoyed Ortega's dig about how he like raises his eyebrow a lot, but the rest of him stays like motionless. That's so funny, her doing like that impression. I love stuff like that because it's almost like a wink to the audience as well, like just sending up like the kind of stereotypical characteristics of the character. But that stuff was funny, but overall like the humour was hit and miss, and I wasn't really into that much of like the Spock, hey, I'm suddenly a human, high drink stuff. Like, it was played for quite goofy comedy, and I wasn't really into it. And a lot of the stuff with like the fiance and her family just dragged the episode down. And I think at times it did feel like there was a lot of padding. The strongest stuff is with Nurse Chapel, I think. I really enjoy her character, and her being motivated to save Spock and do the right thing was a lot of fun. And so the interactions when they go to this planet and you have this solar system like protecting the planet, and when she goes to talk about to the kind of voice, I like then you get different colours that control the planet, and that she interacts with different colours, but it's just a big moment. Then she has to like be the one to convince them to like help and turn Spock back, and just the conversation and the fact that Khan talks her into like, because like the colour she's talking about is like dismissing it as like an insignificant complaint, like it's not an important complaint. So Khan says you need to tell them then you've got feelings for Spock, because that gives it like more of a purpose. So, and she gets them to turn around as she says it, which is really cute. But yeah, she gives like a really good speech to convince them to help him cure. And so when you get like the focus of the episode on Chapel, it's a really good character like episode for her, because I also like the touch of her, like she has an opportunity to like kiss Spock or like confess her feelings for him, and then she does the thing, she gives him like the injection which is going to turn him back, rather than do the selfish thing kind of and like tell him how she feels. But then that happens at the end of the episode where he actually goes to her, so that's a bit of a subversion. But yeah, it as I said, hit and miss episode. The highlights are with Chapel, and I hope they do expand on her character a bit more now, and it's not just about her and Spock all the time. But I do enjoy the character, and I think she saves the episode properly. But overall, it's definitely one of the weaker episodes of Strange New Worlds. So that is my review. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media, and I'll be back with more Star Trek and more TV reviews soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.